Welcome to The World Awaits.
Travel tales to inspire your wanderlust.
I'm Kirsty Bedford, journalist, editor and travel writer.
And I'm Belinda Jackson, author, travel journalist and columnist, and we're your weekly co-hosts.
Hi there, welcome to our winter series, some of the best bits of our show from the last season. This episode is all about long walks. We bring you the inspiring story of a woman who went for a 3,000-kilometre solo hike in some of the most remote parts of the world and found that it not only transformed the way she looked at the world, but also her life. And for our second interview, we take a mindful hike in Nepal. During our winter series, we are so excited to be teaming up with Gypsy Loop to give away one of their gorgeous hair tie bangles. Available in silver or gold, these lovely bangles hold your hair ties so you don't have any more ties on your wrist, leaving tight indents and cutting off circulation. They are in 18-karat gold plate and stainless silver. So mix and match hair tie colours to any outfit, and they are invented by Tracy Morris of the Blonde Nomads, which is a really great blog you should really check out for travelling family ideas in Australia. So, how to win? Email us at hello@theworldawaits.au and tell us which destination you would choose to wear a Gypsy Loop hair tie. Bonus entries if you follow along on Instagram at The World Awaits Podcast, and also at Gypsy Loop's own account, which is GYPSEA Loop. Like this post, tag a friend who needs a hair tie bangle in their life, and you are in it to win it. The lucky winner will be announced on the podcast and via Instagram after the winter series winds up on the 28th of July.
In our first interview, I'm chatting to author, travel writer and speaker Laura Waters, who, while walking the length of New Zealand on her own, had an epiphany and not only quit her corporate job, she transformed her entire life. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Thanks very much. Great to be here.
So good to have you on. So let's start by tell us a little bit about how you came to get into travel and specifically hiking.
Yeah, I guess I'd always had an interest in nature. And when I grew up as a kid, our family would always go for Sunday hikes out in the bush, but they were just, an hour or 2 hours long. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I did my first overnight hike, actually. And a friend sort of walked me through, had a pack a tent and a pack and everything and set out. So that was cool. But things really ramped up. 10 years ago, actually. It's 10 years ago to the month that I decided to hike the whole length of New Zealand, 3,000 kilometres from top to bottom. And so that took 5 months. And that was obviously a big game changer for me.
So tell us about what you were doing before then and what your career sort of trajectory has been. And and then we'll go into specifically what happened in New Zealand.
Yeah, so I was actually working as an executive assistant to a CEO for 10 years, and I had long service leave. And so for years, I'd always been thinking, there's got to be more to life than this. I was not overly fulfilled with, being in a box in the city, even though, on face value, it was a good job and a good life, but I was just thinking there's got to be more to life. And I was reading in a hiking magazine about this new trail that had opened, Te Araroa, and I immediately thought, that's it, that's for me, that's what I want to do. So I set out with a girlfriend, and she pulled out on the second day. So I just thought, well, I'm here now, I'll just give it a go and see how far I get. So, I started walking, and just the process of facing all of those challenges, and there are a lot of challenges hiking in New Zealand, unbridged river crossings and wild weather and steep exposed terrain. So in facing those challenges and succeeding, it sort of gave me a lot of confidence when I came back. And so that led me to quitting my corporate job when I came back and chasing my childhood dream to be a writer, which is now what I do now.
So what happened, or what do you think was the pivotal moment, or was there one, or was it just the whole entirety in New Zealand that kind of made you, because you were going through, had you been through a relationship breakup, or you?
Yeah, just to keep things extra challenging. I'd just come out of a pretty unhealthy relationship and was suffering a kind of PTSD type anxiety and depression. So I was not in a great headspace before I started, really not functioning well at life, and just like a kind of curled up in a ball on the bed half the time in tears for no reason. So I headed out on this trail, and I hoped that, being in nature would fix me, but I really didn't have any idea just how much it would. And it really only took, after suffering these symptoms for well over a year, it only took about 3 or 4 weeks on the trail where I sort of realized, wait a minute, I feel okay now. And that's, it was kind of unexpected, but fantastic. And I really felt like nature was sort of healing me and building me up. And just when you're out in the wilds for 5 months and there's no media, no advertising, no makeup, no mirrors, you've got one outfit, one bag of belongings. I've never been happier than I was with just the sole task of just walking every day. That was it was fantastic. So in that simplicity, my whole identity just fell away, really. I had nothing to remind me of who I was, no familiar job, no familiar possessions, relationships, everything was gone. So I just kind of stripped myself bare and started again when I got home. And just in that space, I sort of had time to think, well, what do I really want out of my life and what do I want to do? And while I was out there on the trail, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I just had the epiphany that I had choices and I didn't have to go back to that normal life that I had before if I didn't want to. And so just knowing that actually freed up a lot of headspace for me to know that I was in control of my life.
Did you do a lot of training beforehand?
I did. I worked with a physio for about 8 months beforehand to strengthen my knees because I had notoriously bad knees. So I did do a lot of physical training. For about 3 weeks before the trip, I walked an hour to work each day and an hour home. And then for the last month of that, I carried my fully loaded backpack as well, much to the amusement of everybody in the corporate offices in Melbourne. But so I did that. And I think you really get most of your fitness on the trail. So nothing can prepare you for walking 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, unless you're actually doing that. But I think the biggest thing you need is a strong mind. If you've got that mental strength, that's what's the most important thing. And fortunately, I'm pretty good at that. I'm pretty good at sucking up the pain and pushing on.
And what was a place maybe in particular in New Zealand when you were hiking that really surprised you or that you found, was not what you expected?
Not what I expected. I guess when I first hit the South Island, I walked the North Island, which is a lot of tangled forests and beaches, challenging in its own ways. But when you hit the South Island and you're going to be following the Alps for months, that sits in your mind as being quite scary. But when I first arrived in the South Island, the sun was out and there was dolphins swimming in the water and there was a killer whale offshore and glowworms and birds. And I was like, this is cool. Of course, that soft welcome didn't last too long. And I ended up getting caught in snowstorms and snowed in a hut for 3 days in summer. But you just... a lot of the time in life we get this fixed idea of what we expect something to be, and the reality is often very different. So there were definitely challenges, but there were also, a lot of realizations that things are different to what you expect sometimes, and to just take things as they come. And that really helped in life when I try now not to worry about things that I don't know about. And this is something we do a lot. We tend to worry about the unknown, but now I just try and get myself as prepared as I can and head into something and tackle the challenges as they come up.
And this hike really set you up as the go-to and an expert sort of for your travel writing. And you wrote you wrote some books as well. So tell us, were you thinking while you were on the walk, hey, maybe I'll write about this, or was that just a subsequent?
Absolutely, yeah. Before I went, I knew I wanted to write a book about it, even though I knew nothing about writing. But when I was a child, I remember wanting to write a book, and I thought, well, now I've got something to write about. And even if no one but my friends and family read it, I just want to tick that box. So when I came back, I quit the corporate job and bought myself a laptop, headed to the Solomon Islands to just switch off for a few months and started writing. And I started also writing for outdoor magazines at the time, writing about my outdoor adventures. And I should also preface that for about a decade before, I'd wanted to be a travel writer too. So I just kind of took the courage that I learned on my hike into this new career, and I just thought I'll just give it a go. And I joke now, but if I ever thought that hiking the length of a country required grit, stamina and determination, it was nothing compared to writing a book about it. It was it's just like a massive learning process. I'd be a lot quicker now, but when I first wrote it, it was challenging. But now I'm a full-time travel writer, and I've written 2 books. So my first book, Bewildered, about hiking the length of New Zealand, I actually won Best Travel Book for that in 2021. And last year I had Ultimate Walks and Hikes Australia come out. So dream realised, childhood dream realised.
Fantastic. And we will put links to both of those in the show notes. So tell us a bit about, let's talk about then, you've gone on to do lots of other hikes. What are some of the places that you think, or what are some of the most incredible hikes that you've done, and what are some of the places that, the most remarkable places that you've been to, or some places that people can follow in your footsteps?
I really have my goal when I go hiking is to really get off the grid. And if I don't see a lot of other people and I see a lot of wildlife, that's a great hike for me. I like to go to places where I can just turn the brain off. So a favourite walk of mine in Australia, well, the absolute favourite is the Larapinta Trail in the outback from Alice Springs to Mount Zonda. There's just a real energy in the outback. You can just really sense that timelessness and the space. It's a very weird feeling, but it's a beautiful feeling, and you feel like your whole psyche just slows down, and I think you feel connected to the energy of the centre. A favourite one in Victoria is probably the Great Southwest Walk, which kind of flies under the radar a little bit. It's I think it's about a 250 kilometre loop, but you can do it in sections in Western Victoria, and it's a great one for wildlife. I think the last time I did it, I saw more koalas than I did other people hike it the trail. So that's super cool. And then New Zealand obviously has a special place in my heart, and you can literally just drop a pin on a map anywhere in New Zealand and there'll be an epic trail there. So my favourite thing is to just get it like a 6-month backcountry hut pass and just, check out the maps, and like pretty much guaranteed every walk, every trail, no matter how minor, is going to be spectacular. I love it.
As a Kiwi, I can vouch for that.
Yes. I don't need to tell you. Yeah.
So what's next for you as far as both, your career as a travel writer? I mean, you're multi-award winning, and what's next for you? And also, and obviously, you'll just keep building on your book, and hopefully that'll just keep being republished every year.
Yeah, hopefully. So I really want to. I do a lot of public speaking now, but I want to sort of take that to next level in the coming year. And I'm really quite passionate about helping, I get a lot of people comment on my book and contact me and say how it's really helped them make changes in their life, or that it's changed their life, or it's given them the courage to do something. So I know it has that message and that story has an effect on people. So I'd like to take that to a larger scale and talk to people about, the power of trying, because none of all of the amazing experiences I've had in the last 10 years would have happened if I hadn't done that walk. And if my friend hadn't agreed to come with me, I probably wouldn't have even tried. So, but by getting on the trail and just taking that first step leads to the next step and the next step. And, by facing challenges and just trying, amazing things can happen. I've written 2 books. I've become a full-time travel writer for major national papers and magazines. I host film festivals around the country every year, about 30 film festivals. So crazy stuff that I never would have thought was possible. But if you just try, amazing things can happen. So I'd like to try and share that message with people.
And it's such a great message. You just have such a remarkable journey and story to tell. I mean, who goes from being an executive assistant to doing, like you said, like all those things that you're now doing, like what a transformation. And it really does take courage and bravery to take that leap, particularly, financially as well. So, and I know you moved home even for a little while because to make this all work. So it hasn't come easy. And I think that's an important message for people to know that, you put the hard yards in. So, yeah, an incredible message, and thank you so much, Laura. It's been so great talking to you. We end all of our interviews with this question. What's the most bizarre thing that's happened to you on your travels?
Last year I was on the Rocky Mountaineer train in Colorado for 2 days. It was a new fancy train between Denver in Colorado and Moab in Utah. And I was on there, and there was a camera crew from the UK, and they were filming one of those world's most scenic railway journeys episodes. And I ended up being on there. So I got interviewed, and I now saw myself on the telly. Yeah, so that was a bit of a surprise.
Oh gosh, another one to add to the to add to the long success list. Well, thanks so much, Laura. It's been so great chatting, and I can't wait to watch and see what you do next.
Gosh, Laura is so inspiring, and Bewildered, her book, is a magnificent read. If you want to get hold of any of her books, go to soultrekkers.com.au.
You're listening to the World Awaits Winter Series. We'd love it if you could give us a rating or review. On Apple Podcasts, click on our profile, scroll down to the bottom to ratings and reviews, and hit those stars. And if you're on Spotify, go to our main page and click the 3 dots under our photo.
I'm chatting with travel writer Nina Karnikowski about mindful travel. Nina's new book is called The Mindful Traveller. It's a fascinating read, and she has just led a wellness tour to the Himalayas with World Expeditions, which she talks about in our interview. Take a listen. Nina, welcome to The World Awaits.
Thank you so much for having me, Belle.
It's so exciting having you on here because, you're a travel writer. I've been reading your byline for years. You've been writing for some of the biggest Australian and international publications. But you've steered your writing in a really different direction, in staying in travel, into mindful travel now. So tell us, what's mindful travel?
Well, mindful travel incorporates all the ideas that are involved in sustainable and regenerative travel, which is something that I've been talking about for a few years before starting to talk about mindful travel. So giving more to places than you take, thinking as a citizen rather than a consumer in destinations, lightening your carbon footprint, all those things, but then also adding to those elements kind of a more philosophical approach to our travels. So really getting clear on your intentions behind why you're taking each trip and what you might learn in the places you're visiting so that you are left as a more beneficial presence for the world, if you will. For the world around you when you get back home. And this is I came into this because I realized the travel industry is responsible for an estimated 8 to 10% of the world's carbon emissions, and things like degraded wilderness areas and over-touristed towns and the erosion of culture and all those things that we're aware of. But on the flip side of that, it also accounts for 1 in 10 jobs. It teaches us tolerance. It broadens our worldviews. And for people like you and me, it is our bread and butter. So for me, it was just important to do it in a way that was more connected, to myself, to the communities that I visit, and to the natural world. And I just want to share that idea with as many people as possible.
That actually you've encapsulated it really well, that you give more than you take. And we were having a chat just before this about how travel writers, how we work. We work at a frantic pace when we're on the road, but this is about time. You need time to travel like this, and this ties in with another string that you're adding to your bow, which is you're leading a 14-day hiking tour through the Nepalese Himalayas with World Expeditions next year. So how is that? How do you do that mindfully? This is a 14-day trip. You've got 8 days of trekking up to Everest. How do you bring that into play in such a journey?
Yeah, well, it's really about slowing everything right down. And so it incorporates many different elements, but in a nutshell, it's about taking in the world around us on a more acute level. And kind of my ideal vision for this is that it widens people's aperture for awe. I think we can travel at a pace that's so fast that we actually miss all of the wonder that's around us, and we're kind of just can be ticking boxes and getting things done, and we kind of come home exhausted. This is almost the opposite of that. So you're doing things like, we'll be walking in silence for portions of it. We'll definitely be walking at a slower pace. I teach writing as a form of kind of self-inquiry. So we'll be journaling to, really digest the places that we're in and reflecting on what's happening around us. And I'll be speaking about things like taking less photographs. I once interviewed the amazing artist Jimmy Nelson, who takes photographs of some of the world's last remaining tribes. And I said to him, what's your sort of most sustainable travel tip? And he said, well, here's a thought. How about you take 1 photograph each day? Because if you're doing that, you are inherently taking things very slowly. You're being very conscious of everything that you're seeing, everything that you're taking in. And I just loved that idea. I mean, I'm not going to be forcing people to take 1 photo a day, but I love that that's a concept. And I think it's important for us to think about that so that we're not just snap, 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 and not even seeing the things that we're taking the photos of. So we'll also be, shopping with locals, so the money goes directly back into the economy. And maybe we'll touch on that a bit more in a minute. Sitting with a Buddhist monastery where we're in with a Buddhist monk, I should say, when we're in Kathmandu. So all of these beautiful, really nourishing experiences that will hopefully leave everybody with a much deeper link to this place that we've traveled all that way to visit.
It's so different to, so different to the way we work. We travel as travel writers and as journalists. You are, you're always trying to be at the head of the pack. You've got to get that photo. You photograph everything. I take so many notes on my camera, every sign, every guidepost. You're trying to cram that information in, and then you come home and process it. So it's such a different way. Like, it's just, the way, we've both traveled in that fashion for years doing the work that we do. It's even just the pace that you're walking at. So when I was reading the itinerary of your upcoming tour, it was saying things like day 6, you're walking 3,500 meters walk, and that'll take 4 to 5 hours. So, how is that, bearing the fact that you're at altitude as well, is that, how slow is that compared to how the average pace is for people walking on these sorts of things?
Well, it will be, it's definitely at a relaxed pace, but also this idea of kind of stopping, taking it in, stopping for breaks, really, like I say, walking in silence, those sorts of things. Like just based on what you said before about the way that we can travel. So I just did this trip in Uluru. It was a deep listening to nature retreat, and it really was just, exactly everything that I'm talking about, where we walked the circumference in silence as a group. And our facilitator, when we first arrived in Uluru, and bear in mind, I had been there already for 3 days with a girlfriend, and we had done the exact opposite of this. We were taking all the photos and just having a great time together. And then we get there and our facilitator said, okay, get out of the car, when we were sort of, probably 20 minutes still away from Uluru. And she said, just get out and look at Uluru from afar. But the most important thing is to let Uluru see you. And that was just such a powerful moment, because it's like flipping a script to go, actually, if the natural world is the most important thing in this instance, and we want to all do better on behalf of the natural world, then that kind of shift in perspective can be really, really powerful. And there's this phrase that I love, solophilia. I don't know if you've ever heard that word. It was actually coined by an Australian about 10 years ago, and it's about this love of the living world and the interconnectedness between every living thing. And I really think that feeling is most powerfully inspired by these kind of slower hikes out in nature, which is such a salve for our kind of technologically addled brains. And there's studies all around the world showing that being immersed in nature can make our brains healthier, it can increase our attention span, our creativity, lower blood pressure, all those sorts of things. So I just think it's such an urgent thing actually to slow down.
Yeah, and I guess it really is actually the antithesis of what has normally been the Everest or the Nepal trekking, and that is clocking up the miles, hitting the milestones, pushing yourself, being harder, better, faster to win. We've all seen those terrible photos of queues of climbers trying to make it, trying to summit the peaks there, and the degradation that happens to the landscape on the way. So traveling lightly in Nepal, how do you do that?
Yeah, so I mean, you're exactly right. And there was also that documentary that came out about a year ago with the guy who tried to do all of the peaks in some kind of record-breaking amount of time. So it becomes this kind of very macho thing of just getting to the summit. But this is the opposite of that, where it's actually not about achieving the goal. It's about trying to just inhabit the moment and trying to just be in that moment, which, I mean, we hear that from Indigenous cultures the world over, of like that ability to just sink into the present moment. And I think the Sherpa people in Nepal are inherently, from what I have experienced, they are in the moment all of the time, and they are in just inhabiting that. And so I think really getting to interact with the local community and with our Sherpa guide who'll be with us, and doing things like spending money in the local community is another really important element of this kind of travel, because I'm sure some of your listeners are aware of this term leakage, where it's like 95%, according to the UN World Tourism Organization, of the money that we spend as travelers leaks out of the destination we're in. And so what we want to do, ideally as travelers, is leave as many of our very powerful travel dollars in the community as possible. And that adds this whole extra element, because if you're kind of talking to shopkeepers and going, oh, where was this made? And is this something that is important for this local community? Or, oh, hey, who owns this hotel or camp or whatever? You're going to inherently develop a deeper relationship with that place, because you're interacting and you're asking questions, and you've got, I think curiosity is such a huge part of mindful travel, and that paying attention to things and really having an open mind so you can properly take it all in.
So, of course, some of the tips that you're giving us are not just about traveling in Nepal, but also the way that, maybe we should be rethinking how we travel in general, about how you spend your money, where you're buying your take home goods? You know, are you buying the block of triangular chocolate, or or are you actually buying something that's been made by somebody that the money, that the term of leakage is a really interesting idea. And also along the way, you do visit different projects around Kathmandu, and on the way too, visiting farming projects and
Yes.
other supporting.
Yeah, so we're going to be visiting this regenerative women's organic farming project. And I mean, that kind of incorporates two of the most important things when we're talking about this kind of more thoughtful travel. One of which is the empowerment of women, because we've got many statistics around that too, of when you support women, they then are able to support their entire family. They share the knowledge that they gain from that experience, and it really can uplift the whole community. And then also that organic farming element. I mean, we are becoming increasingly aware of the importance of soil health for the health of absolutely everything, from our own guts to, you know, the health of the very earth that we are living on. So being able to support initiatives like that is just such a powerful way to travel, you know, and they're everywhere around the world. So it just takes a little bit more research, and you can have some really life-changing experiences when you kind of work those into your travels. Like last year when I was in India, I went and visited a women's ethical fashion initiative called Saheli Women. And it was one of those experiences where not only did that mean that the travel dollars that I was putting into that trip were going to that initiative, but also I have never put on a piece of clothing since that trip without thinking of the hands who made that piece of clothing. And that's a really transformative experience for the rest of your life.
Amazing. And you've rounded up a lot of these experiences, ideas in your latest memoir as well, haven't you? That's The Mindful Traveller.
Yes, and the last chapter of that is the second last chapter of that is actually set in Nepal, because I've travelled there 4 times now, but the last time was last year, and I stayed in the mid-Himalayas in a tiny little village called Phaplu, in a place called the Happy House, where, you know, it was just all of the things that we'll be doing on this trip were incorporated in that too. You know, that hiking at a slower pace, and giving that particular hotel of 20 rooms gives back to the local community. You know, it invests money into the local hospital and into the local monastery and into a biking project for kids to get them to go to school. But also it's completely staffed by Sherpa people. So that means that you're just immersed in that world for the whole time, and you're not kind of, you're not the outsider looking in. You're really in it. And so that will hopefully we'll be recreating a lot of those moments on this trip in April.
Oh, it sounds really exciting, and I think such a different mindset for people. And before I let you go, I'm going to ask you the question that we ask all our guests, which is, and I can't wait to hear this one. What is your most bizarre travel experience?
Well, it's actually making and drinking yak vodka in Mongolia, which was as disgusting as it sounds. It was, not only was it yak vodka, but it was hot yak vodka. And I know, and I don't know if any of your listeners have traveled to Mongolia, but Mongolian people are very into etiquette. You cannot turn anything down that is offered to you. So when you are offered some of this hot yak vodka, you have to drink it. I know you have to continue drinking it. I know. But it was just one of those most magical experiences where we were in the Orkhon Valley and we were staying with a nomadic family, and just seeing the way that the Mongolian nomads, they actually use every single thing in their environment. So there's no such thing as wastage. So this is why they're doing things like making yak vodka, so nothing goes to waste.
Can I ask? I have to ask the question, What part of yak is in the vodka?
The milk. So it's like yak milk that is somehow fermented and then distilled, and it's I guess that's why it was still warm. And they also have this fermented mare's milk, so you have a choice of that or the yak vodka. So it's really quite interesting. And they make cheese from all these things too, and they offer you the cheese, which is sort of also very interesting. And it's just, they will slaughter an animal for you to eat. So they slaughtered this goat, and then you see on the top of their gur tents, you see all the innards drying on top of it, and then you see the skin drying on a stump over there. So they're really using every single piece of these animals because that's the way, I guess, we all once lived. And even just seeing that and knowing, okay, that's not a possibility for all of us to live in that way, but you don't forget it, and you really take those sort of lessons about, don't waste things. You take that back to your life. And I certainly did from that trip.
You just might not take yak vodka back at
No, never again.
That was Belle, travel writer and mindful travel advocate Nina Karnikowski, and it was really interesting about Nina's suggestion of walking in silence. If you'd like to read more of Nina's work, visit her at ninakarnikowski.com, and to find out more about her tour to the Nepalese Himalayas, visit worldexpeditions.com.
And we'll put all the links mentioned above in the show notes, which you can see on our website at theworldawaits.au.
That's a wrap for The World Awaits this week. Click to subscribe anywhere you listen to your favourite pods. And where can people find you, Kirsty?
I'm at Kirsty Writes on Instagram. That's KIRSTIE Writes, WRITES. And where can people find you, Belle?
You can find me at globalsalsa.com or on Insta at global_salsa.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.